It's about taking a system that seemed only to work for one group, white men, that's what seemed to work for, and say, this is no longer acceptable, we have to open it up. So a lot of people benefited from affirmative action, but the only people anyone ever talks about, because it's easier to get pissed off about us getting something that people think we shouldn't be getting, is to say, you know, well, black folks benefit, everybody benefits.
Do you feel, though, and I hear that point, I absolutely hear that, especially from a historical perspective, but do you feel that in today's world, that still needs to exist?
Well, that's the question, right?
I want to hear.
Well, do you really think that the playing field is even?
No, but I also don't think
but
I also don't think the playing field is even for privileged white people versus poor white folks that come from a neighborhood. I don't think that's an even playing field.
There is a difference between poverty and race.
Right, so that's what I'm asking you to...
And I'll give that to you. Yeah. I think that the white student from Appalachia should also benefit, and they are.
Yes,
part of it.
Financial also.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so, you know, the question that we all need to ask ourselves, which is, I think, the question that Sarah was posing, are we at this evil playing field? Are we where we want to be as a society? And I think the resounding question is no. And that's why you still need the affirmative action. And the Supreme Court has made it very clear that it's a holistic approach that these universities are looking at. They're looking at poverty.
Yes.
They're looking at diversity. They're looking at...
And that's a myth. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I think that we're in a period in history that we have to be very vigilant.
Yes.
Because there are assaults on all sorts of civil rights going on during this Trump administration.
Yeah.
For example, they've attacked sexual assaults on campuses. They don't quite think that that's an issue. Transgenders in the military, we heard that last week about how they suddenly want to discriminate against soldiers who are transgender. Access to voting. I mean, the voter ID laws. I mean, making old people who don't drive show a picture ID. They don't have a picture ID. Discrimination protections for gay employees. This is something that came out this week. What is happening is there seems to be a systematic eroding of civil rights that we in this country have been working for since World War II.
Well, one thing that comes to mind is when we look at our representatives in the government right now, and we say, when we look at that people that first addressed the health care, oh, this was a room full of white men. Until our representation is reflective of our population, we haven't caught up yet. So when you look at women in executive positions, you know, whether it's any person of color in different things, until we can kind of play catch up for what we've done as a nation for centuries, we set them back. So now it's time to bring people forward.
Women, you know, listen, remember, maybe I say remember, but you won't because you weren't born. But the women's movement, one of the issues about the women's movement was they said, listen, we want this ceiling broken. We've been working our behinds off. First of all, to be a woman and to get a credit card if you weren't married was difficult. To be a woman and get anything on your own.
To vote.
That was just the 60s you're talking about.
I'm just talking about the 60s.
Yeah.
But, you know, to be able to get anything going, I mean, that's part of the reason women just said, this is enough is enough.
You also didn't have women in the workforce. And then now as they're entering...
You had women in the workforce, but they had to act like they were dudes.
And you had certain jobs available to them.
And they're still not making as much money as men. And I think the President Obama said it the best. We're a country that can't guarantee outcomes, but we can guarantee an equal shot. And we need to guarantee that.
The way you're describing it to me sounds like when you talk about a holistic approach, I understand that. I agree with you 100%. But a lot of times I feel like when this debate happens, suddenly, immediately, and through it all, it becomes about race.
Well, that's
and it's
because
not.
that's why I'm saying
that. Right. That's why I was asking.
Because it's never. Go ahead, John.
But you know what I was going to say? This country is based on systemic racism, starting with slavery and then Jim Crow. That has to be. That has to be addressed. It's in the process of being addressed.
And the easiest way
it's never going to be equal until that is addressed.
The easiest
and that's what affirmative action tries to do.
Way to upset white people is to say black teenage girls are wasting money on welfare. That gets people all riled up. You say, oh, it's just black people who went and took the easy way and got affirmative. the minute you make it about race,
It becomes
they don't have to.
divisive, too.
They don't. Yes, they
Yeah.
don't have to actually
understand.
tell you what's really going on. You know, because if you're trying to just make your point, that's the starting place for most people. But I think lots of people have actually done their homework about affirmative action.
No question.
And
55
realize. Go ahead.
55% of white people that were what are these polled? They're polled were in favor of affirmative action. Now, granted, there were like 84% of black people were in favor of it, but the majority of Americans understand
Right.
that the playing field is not level, and
level.
that
And
is
that
the question.
54%, a lot of
I
those
agree.
folks
Are women.
benefited.
Yeah.
You know, benefited
Are white
from it
women.
because it benefited those who were being left behind.
Why is it that we can have this conversation, though, and it's so hard for
We're
politicians
not
to
on
do
Fox.
what just happened?
We'll be right back.
Still ahead, royal boozing. Reports that 91-year-old Queen Elizabeth knocks back 4 drinks a day. Does the palace need an intervention?